Okay, great to be with you, Martin.
Yes, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
I've gotten used to the flow of talking with people on the other side of the planet, and there's a bit of a delay, right?
Yeah, yeah. I guess one of the things that's happened over the last couple of years for me is I've my notion of geography has really started to collapse, and I have friends and colleagues and clients, all over the world now, and I often forget where the person is geographically who I'm talking with.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Same. We have made the world so much smaller, in many ways, so many good ways, right? So that's awesome.
Mm.
How
Yeah,
did Becky Fares just show up? You're gonna start to see your people pop up in the chat too. Mind you, it is like 5 o'clock in the morning there right now.
it is 5 o'clock in the morning. Hey, Becky,
Oh,
nice to see you.
I'm a morning person too, so it's all good. That's why I was like, I'm down. What time do you usually start your day?
Uh, Around about 3:30 in the morning. I'm
Really?
Yeah. It's, I guess, when I say it like that, it sounds kind of extreme, but it's not like some monkish, ascetic, discipline. It's just like that's just the time I wake up at,
Yep. Just go with it.
yeah.
I love it. I mean, I feel like I'm just getting, honestly, I'm like I'm making money before the rest of the world wakes up. That's the way I look at it, right? Like made my money before people are just getting out of bed. So that's kind of one of my ways of looking at it.
Yeah. I read a book. I'm going to say I think it was Daniel Pink, but I might be wrong on the author. It's called When, and it's about in large part our circadian rhythms, and how there are larks and owls, and some people are morning people and some people are night people,
Mhm.
and just that really inspired me just to kind of go with it. And I'm definitely a morning person, and I find that if I never set an alarm, I just I just wake up at that time and I'm like, yes, time to get out of bed. And sometimes, I mean, I guess most people do. I wake up in the middle of the night, fairly often, look across, it's like 1 a.m. I'm like, oh darn it, I can't get up yet,
Yes,
like
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's now on the flip side of that, are you like me? Like this actually, like this is really important for me to have this conversation because I've really been, looking forward to this. But this happens to be like my lowest hour of the day, like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. I'm dying. If I didn't cry, I took a nap just so I could be here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm dying at this point usually.
Yeah, I'm the same actually. Like I absolutely get my best work done sort of before midday. And normally I post on social media. I create a carousel every morning,
Yeah.
and that takes me like an hour and a half. And yesterday, because I had a couple of things in the morning, I didn't have space for that. I didn't make space for that, and so I ended up doing it starting at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was like, oh, like going through treacle to my brain
Yeah,
fog, and like
right.
at 5 o'clock when I was still like cursing and trying to make the slides work, it was like, oh god, yeah, never
Yeah,
night reminder to self, don't this is my best time of day.
that's real talk. It looks polished, but you don't know the travail to get there. Oh man.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, for those who don't know you now, I've been hyping you up all week, but if you could just say your name and your business, and we'll just go where the conversation goes from there.
Yeah, I'm Raphael Bender. I'm in Melbourne, Australia, and we're in month X of lockdown
Right.
still. Uh, and I am the CEO of Breathe Education. We train Pilates instructors. We do that online. We were in person before the pandemic, but we've been, since March 2020, we've been 100% online. And now we're an online company, so we don't actually have a physical workplace.
Okay.
We have team members all over the globe, all over the country, different time zones. I've got people in Egypt and the US and Canada and the Philippines and Australia, and yeah, so that's the short version of me.
Fantastic. Now, it's so funny, we have these conversations with people when we see what they're doing on social media. I didn't know that you weren't. like an online platform prior to this time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I started, teaching Pilates, in person with in a bricks and mortar studio. I had a bricks and mortar studio in here in Melbourne for about a decade.
Sure.
Sold that in 2016 and started the education company, and that was a
Mm-hmm.
bricks and mortar business in a different
Right.
part of Melbourne. And we expanded out. We used to give trainings in different states in Australia. Now, Australia, we've only got a tiny population, like half the size of California in terms of
Yeah.
population, but geographically we're almost as big as the continental 48 states of the US. Like we're geographically we're big.
Yeah.
So we've got 5 or 7 different capital cities in
Mm-hmm.
Australia, and so we used to deliver trainings in different cities, and we had people on the ground in some cities, and I used to fly around a bunch. So I used to fly 3 weekends of the month. Had my gold status with the airline that they
Yeah. Yeah.
get to have a cafe latte in the lounge.
Right.
And so that was kind of our business. We I used to fly, teach all weekends, help people learn the roll up and all of those good things.
Right.
And yeah, March last year it was like, oh, that's not a thing anymore. So we
Yeah.
had to pivot. Yeah,
Right. Right.
like everybody else.
Like everyone
Like
else.
everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, before that, when you were doing that travel and stuff, like, was that the plan to get into that place where you were doing all those things? Because that sounds, on this side of it, that sounds sexy to do, right? Like I travel and I got my gold status
Yeah.
and I just drop in and just teach some, drop some wisdom and then fly off to the next city and save the day with Pilates there. Like, was that the master plan, or did it just kind of
Um,
evolve into that?
to be honest, I never really had a master plan. Um, I think one of the secrets that you only learn as you become more successful is that everybody's just making it up as they go along. No one knows the answers.
Right.
and
Yes.
and most times when people explain their success, it's done in hindsight, and it's like, oh yeah,
Right.
this was the inevitable path that led me to this
Hmm.
point. But when you're in the moment, it's like, for me anyway, like I'm just feeling my way through. Like
Just
I think
groping in the
everybody
dark.
does that. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So I mean, that was a lot of fun. Like I was really excited when I got my gold little gold thing from the
Yeah,
airline.
for sure.
I felt like, I'm here. I've made it.
I've arrived, right? Yeah.
um, and it's certainly made a big difference. Like when you fly a lot, you know, saving half an hour at the airport in the check-in, and it's like that makes a big difference. When you fly a lot.
Yeah.
And having your luggage come out first, and all of that, like that that really makes a difference.
Efficiencies, right?
Um,
Yeah.
but and I love, I do love teaching, and I love connecting with different people, and I love, because we get to teach at different people's studios. We would be hosted at whatever studio. So I loved, visiting people's businesses and checking out the
Mm,
classes, and meeting the team, all that stuff. It was
yeah.
fantastic. But like everything, there's a yin and a yang to it, and it's time away from family. It's
Yeah.
putting your daily rhythm out. It's hard to work out when you're on the road. Like there are all of these things. So it's like, I think by the end of it, I mean, I haven't flown. I haven't stepped foot in an airport for 2 years now. I don't miss it. You know,
Yeah. I get that sense of people like they're almost secretly relieved that they got out of it, even though they
yeah,
were right in the middle of it and they appear to be enjoying it. There's a sense, there's like this sigh of relief that they don't have to do another conference or like travel, 3 weekends a month or that sort of thing.
yeah. Well, I think, and this sort of puts me in mind of your situation, that with every crisis comes opportunity, and often it's an opportunity to reflect on what's important.
Yes.
And I love what you've created here, and I'm a big fan of just the kind of raw honest, authentic, no bullshit, just humans conversing about
Yeah.
stuff
Right.
that you've created. And you know, I mean, what I know of your backstory is this grew at the start of the pandemic out of a chat you and your wife had over coffee on the kitchen table one time.
Yeah.
And it's
And
turned into something that's like 2 years ago. I'm pretty sure you would have never imagined, you know, this would be your future.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still, and it's funny thing, it's still the highlight of my day. We've gotten back to some life as it was, like in person, whatnot, but like I still have to carve out 90 minutes of my morning to do this gladly, right? Like it's so much easier to take one more client and just make some money on that hour session, or I can do this and just connect the world, and just do other things that make me feel alive. All right, so
Yeah, I think, and you know, I think we're so lucky that the pandemic came at the time that it did. Like, if it had come, say, 5 years ago, social media, technology, etc., wasn't quite there yet to the point where we could have sustained these kinds of communities and
that's
created
true.
these connections.
True. Yeah. Actually, I thought of something earlier I was gonna say with that. Now we kind of stumbled upon the role that we're in, and now you've made some pivots. You've gone online, and do you feel? I don't know if you have an athletic background, if I'm appealing to the athlete in you, but like, do you almost feel like, let's see if we could recreate this on purpose this time around?
How do you mean?
Well, what I mean is that like the business in the bricks and mortar model worked, and now
Mm-hmm.
you're creating in almost a consulting based model as opposed to a bricks and mortar based model. Do you feel
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, well, let me just take all that I learned there, and let's see if we can make this greater than the last thing? Or
Oh
is it
yeah,
kind of, or is it like it
100%.
just,
No,
yeah, okay,
no. Like when I have wanted to have an online only business since I had a bricks and mortar Pilates studio. Like
okay,
in 2010, you know, when I opened my studio in 2006.
okay,
You know, in 2010, I remember, you know, wishing, it's like, oh, darn it, you know, we've just got this physical product. If only we had like an information product or something that
something you could scale
we could
instead of,
scale, you know.
yes,
Um, and I could never really see how that could fit in with teaching Pilates, you know.
yes,
Um,
right,
and when we were an education company, sort of 2016 to 20, uh, you know, I was starting to dream about, oh yeah, we could do this online, but there was so much, you know, like the absolute sort of received wisdom, and I had, you know, drunk that from that cup as well. Like the
it's not the
everybody
same,
knew
you gotta
that
have this,
that
yeah,
online teaching wasn't as good as you know,
yes,
everyone knew that, you know,
right,
and
yes,
of course it turns out we were all wrong,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, right,
but you know, when the pandemic came at, you know, in Australia, and it's like the whole country basically went into lockdown, you know, I just was so excited. I thought, you know, this is it. This is the
let's
chance. We
go.
can do it. You know.
Yes,
So yeah. So we're not going back. Like we're never going back to be an in-person company. We were all based here in Melbourne. Like, so we had a bricks and mortar, you know, office. We used to go there together and have lunch and congregate and all, you know, all those things that you do with colleagues. And that was awesome. People used to come round to my wife and I's house once a week, and everyone worked together, sitting around in our lounge room. Like, it was very, very communal.
yes,
But you know, since we've decided to go online, it we've created a different sort of community, and you know, I know that you know what I'm talking about because that's what you're doing right here and now.
yes,
And it's actually meant that, you know, although we don't get to cook together and, you know, all those other sort of physical things, we get to actually hang out a lot more with each other,
yes,
and with the students. So we use Slack now, which is basically just a real-time messaging platform that we communicate within the team and with
mhm.
students. Like, there's so much more continuity with our engagement with each other
That
now
continuity
than there
piece,
was. Yeah,
yes. It's
yeah,
interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about like continuity piece? Because that's the thing I was thinking. Like, it's almost like there's less resistance to getting together because I just have to log on
yeah,
5 minutes before, instead of planning half my day to make sure that I can get there and just logistically make
Yeah.
everything happen, right?
Well, I think for, one of the things that we discovered is that when when we first went online, we did it like, I think, everybody else, we just kind of clumsily did it. We basically just did like what we did in person, but we filmed it and put it on Zoom. It was like
Yeah.
just business as usual plus a camera,
Right,
Um,
right.
and and we discovered like halfway through the first session, we discovered like, oh, this really isn't working. Like this is terrible. Because it's like, and when we look back now, it's like it's obvious. It's like sitting for 6 hours on a Zoom session is just
Right.
it's not doable.
Painful. Right, yeah.
And so we were like, oh, but our whole model is we teach, 6 hours on a Saturday, 6 hours on a Sunday, and then you go away and do your personal practice and whatever, come back a month later and we do it again, and we keep doing that until you've done all the things. And so we realized like 3 hours into the first session, it's like, no, we have to change this model.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really, really liberating, because we just looked around and went, okay, what does the research say? So there's lots of academic literature on online learning, and what
Good that you looked into that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, well that's kind of a foundational value for us, is science and data.
You like that segue? Yes.
And so there's a lot of literature on what factors promote success in online learning in terms of curriculum design, in terms of delivery, in terms of accessibility, lots of different factors. And then we just also looked at like, well, who's doing online learning really well, outside of Pilates. So we looked at General Assembly and Stanford and Harvard and different places that had, fantastic programs that were highly rated. Yeah. We just went and enrolled in those programs, and we're like, oh, what are they doing? What software are they using? How are they designing theirs? And it turns out that like all of the literature basically and all of the best practices, and we ended up just copying basically General Assembly, which is they're a coding company. Like they teach computer coding, to programmers online. So totally different industry, but they have this great platform, like this great thing where they basically used Zoom and Slack and they integrated them together. And it was they created this continuous learning experience where it's, like, I think most or just about all Pilates education is done in blocks, right? So you travel to the studio, you do a block, whether it's a weekend or a week or whatever, and then you go home and you're basically left to your own devices for a week or a month or whatever it is. Whereas
and then come back and do the next module sort of thing. Right.
And and we've all been through Pilates training, and we all have had the experience of at the end of the weekend or the intensive week or whatever, your brain is just totally, overflowing, and you're feeling overwhelmed, and it's all, so many factoids floating around in your brain and whatever. And then you're a month, you've got, in our case, we used to do once a month. And then basically you go away and you practice, and halfway through your practice, 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, am I still practicing it right? Or am I,
exactly.
like,
you've forgotten 3/4 of it. You're practicing the same quarter, like on repeat. Yeah. Been there.
So with the model that we've moved to, it's just like, it's a continuous program. So now we do the same number of hours, but it's just 21 weeks of continuous study, and you're studying 5 days a week, but it's just like an hour and a half a day, 5 days a week,
So
and so
fresh.
So the continuity piece is, well, you have a lecture on Monday, then you have a tutorial on Wednesday, then you do a masterclass on Thursday, then you do some, class practice with your classmates on Friday. And so it's like there's a constant just layering and repetition of that experience, and people, and within, in between that, there's all of these conversations that happen in Slack, like, oh, I'm stuck with my roll up, my feet keep lifting off the floor. How do I, So all of those things happen, and they're the things that I think, before March last year, our students were still wondering, like, oh, how come my feet come up in roll up? But they're just stuck at home wondering that, not, not being able to
interacting and
just,
having
yeah.
accessibility to, that's great. That's, I mean, that's so intuitive. I love the fact that you went to other industries to look at what they do. There's so much that we can learn if we look at it from that perspective. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, I've heard you talk about this theme that there's, of basically, there's a lot of things in the Pilates industry that we need to. I mean, there's so much about Pilates that's awesome, and so much about the industry that's awesome. And I absolutely agree with you. There's so much we need to celebrate. And I loved your
Hmm.
little "we are here," you know,
Yeah,
post earlier today. And I'm 100% with you on that.
thank you, thank you. Yeah,
And I also agree that there's so much that needs to change. uh,
yeah,
and I think we can look at, there are other people in the world that are getting some of the things right that we're getting wrong presently, and vice versa, right?
yeah,
It's not like we're doing everything wrong, but we can just look like, oh well, has someone solved this problem somewhere else? Can we just do what they're doing?
right. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have like a personal training background before you got into Pilates too, like that fitness side of it, or no?
I'd, yeah, kinda. You're a fitness trainer as well, right? You do
Yeah,
personal
I do
training, you do
personal
strength and
training.
conditioning.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason why I ask, you see how there's a lot of things that are happening in the personal training world that's still ahead of the fitness, like the Pilates world, right? So
Mhm.
even though it was like we tend to silo them, they're all integrated. But you see how I
Yeah.
used to say all the time, there's certain things that are happening over here. Like why aren't we doing it that way yet? And you start to see now different organizations are doing it, or certain people are looking at Pilates from a science perspective or
Yeah.
periodization in the way that they like those sort of things, right? So you're right. There are so many different things that we can glean from other areas and bring into our practice.
I think, yeah, 100%. I mean, there's so much what I would call woo in the, like non-scientific, pseudoscientific stuff in the personal training world as well. Like, I mean, if
Yeah.
in Australia here, when I used to go to the fitness convention from time to time, it's like people selling, trainers selling supplements that it's outside their scope of practice to recommend nutritional advice to people. People telling, like all kinds of crazy stuff happens in the
Yes.
personal training world as well.
Yes.
But I think one thing that, but I agree with you, that stuff about periodization and strength training and science-based, training programs and stuff, they do that by and large pretty well. But one thing I think that culturally I'm really interested in is the mindset around sales
Okay.
and
Okay.
making money and running a fitness business. Like, I think my perception is, by and large, in the fitness world, those are all seen as like desirable goals and things that people aspire to.
Right.
Whereas in the Pilates world, it seems to me we've got a lot of baggage around sales and profitability and running a business.
Well, Raphael, I don't want to be a sleazy salesperson. I just want to help people move better.
Yeah, 100%,
Heard that
100%.
one before?
Yeah. And it's, yeah, I think we have a lot of, yeah, I think we have basically, like, I mean, I can't say it any better than what you just said. Yeah, so tell
Yeah.
me your thoughts on that. I'm interested to hear.
Well, I'm passionate about this because people say I don't want to be in sales, and I'm like, you're selling right now, like
Yeah.
the and yeah. I said this it's on the podcast that's coming out today. The five keys to sales are relationship, 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 and relationship. So when it comes down to it, when you're building relationship with people and you understand what their needs are and you're organically meeting their needs, they're going to see the value in renewing that sale or whatever. Like get over yourself in terms of the ask. But once you're in it and you're continuing to just meet people at their point of need, through relationship, it'll be easy to renew and you find your words, all those things. I think it can be done and it can be done in a bold way without you coming across as being a sleazy salesman or trying to do something that's too pushy. Like I think a lot of people that are in the Pilates world and in the personal training world too, they've probably been in a big box gym and seen somebody who is a mediocre trainer who is doing big numbers in sales and they get personal trainer of the month award for their sales and they suck at training, right? So they see that and they're like, I don't want to be that guy or that girl. I'm going to do this over here. And then they stay away from sales altogether.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you. Like it is possible to be very successful in the sales and that side of things without being a great trainer. Um, just like it's very possible to be a very successful, singer without being a great singer. um,
Yeah.
uh, and I'm sure that holds true in just about any realm of life. Maybe there are some areas where it's very, very strictly competence based, like being a pilot, right? Where I
Right.
imagine it's hard to be a very successful pilot if you're not a great pilot.
Right.
But um, but I think in our world, uh, I agree with you. We've run from one side of the boat to the other side of the boat, you know, and
Right.
and we've now most of us have succeeded in becoming great trainers who are very unsuccessful financially, and for
Yeah.
most people it's either an expensive hobby that we indulge in or
Mhm.
it's a supplement, to our day job, or or we're eking out a living, you know.
Yes. Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the crux of it. I like having the conversation at this point because there is always someone who watches this live or after who is working, at someone's studio, has another job full time, and they don't know how to cross that chasm into making this a career, how to doing this full
Mm.
time, or they don't have the confidence to jump out of the boat and just do their own thing. So, what are the nuts and bolts of crossing over into making it an actual profitable endeavor?
Well, I think it just is intentionality. I mean, if you want to become a great Pilates instructor, what do you have to do? I mean, you have to study how to become a great Pilates instructor. You have to practice being a great Pilates instructor. You have to learn from people who've already, trod that path. And so, well, no different. You want to be successful in business. That's a skill set, and you need to look for people who have already, succeeded in the way that you want to succeed. You need to
Mhm.
read books. You need to practice skills. You need to, study the areas that you lack, skill in. Like, I
Right.
mean, if you're a Pilates instructor student and you're thinking like, gee, my cueing sucks, it's like, well, you've got to practice, got to read books, you got to, and if you're in business, you're thinking, oh, I don't know how to do marketing. Well, you got to go learn, like
Mhm.
people know how to do that stuff. Go, go learn it.
Right. Do you recommend, and we mentioned this earlier, going to other industries to learn your marketing, all those different things? Is there a point where you simply just go to someone in the Pilates industry to understand how you actually close a Pilates sale instead of go sign up for some like how to make 10K in 1 month business course somewhere?
Uh, well, yeah, I think the how to make 10K in 1 month business courses is something you should steer clear of. I agree.
Yes, yes.
um, uh, there's a fantastic book. I'm pretty sure it's not a real book, but it's for sale on Amazon. It's actually the guy that's put it up there is the leader of one of my favorite bands called Wolfpack.
Okay.
And it's a book. It's called How I Made $290,000 Selling Books on Writing Books. And there is one copy for sale, and it's $290,000. And obviously it's a joke,
Yes,
right? But it's
yes.
actually up there on Amazon.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
so that sort of thing, yes, you should steer clear of, because I think the the $10,000 a month applies to the person who's selling the program, not the not the students.
Not the student. Right.
Um, but I think, like, well, there's all, like you said before, like there's all kinds of ways to sell, you
Mhm.
know, and there's totally relationship based selling. There are lots of people out there who sell with integrity, and just find someone who you respect and like, and who has runs on the board, you know, and
Yeah.
go learn off them.
Right.
Like, find someone who, like if you're on Instagram and you find people that's like, oh, I love this person's content, and then you buy something off them, well, that means they're good at sales, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah,
Go learn off
exactly.
them.
Yes. So that's kind of my segue into what I stumbled across, and that was your conversation with Jenna Zaffino yesterday.
Hmm.
And so you guys are launching a new program,
Yeah.
and I asked her because I wasn't sure if you guys were like, well, I guess it just kind of, if I saw it live yesterday that you could talk about it. So, can you just talk about the project that you guys are working on?
Yeah, I mean, Jenna and I was on Jenna's podcast first, I don't know, a few years ago, and we've been friends since. And we've always had this kind of sense that we would work together at some point in the future. And, fairly recently, a couple of months back, we just, for some reason, it just happened to be the planets aligned for us. And we both looked across at each other figuratively and said, hey, I think now's the time. And so, um, so we've been talking a lot about, what could we give, how could we help?
Yes.
And we saw, this is what we saw is that people struggle I think in the Pilates world a lot with the demons of how to build a business and the the not just the skill set of how to do sales and build a team and all that stuff, but also the mindset and I guess even the heart set of how do you reconcile, you know, making money and helping people. Like we're all in this because we love
Right.
helping people and we have a passion, and most of us would, I think, would feel that we have a vocation, that we're called to this, profession.
Right.
And it's somehow, I think, a lot of us feel guilty or feel like we're somehow, degrading that, the nobility of that calling by charging what we're worth and having a bank balance that
Right.
grows. And,
Right.
you know, and, and, and so, yeah, I mean, we want to help. We want to help people have, build a business, whether build a business that they are proud of
Right.
and that they feel happy and liberated when they think about it, because they're like, heck yeah, I get paid to do this. This is awesome. And not just like I get paid a token amount, but it's like, hey, I can buy nice things and I can take holidays and I can, like have a lifestyle that I want. And
Right.
my, like I guess it's an idea that's really inspired me. Someone that's really inspired me is a guy called Blair Entz. He's Canadian.
Okay.
And I don't know where in Canada he's from, but it's some tiny little town in the woods somewhere. And
That could be
he's a
anywhere
design
outside of Toronto.
he's a designer. He's not in
Yes.
Pilates at all. He's a visual artist,
Okay.
and he's actually he doesn't do visual arts anymore. He now teaches visual artists how to make money being a designer, right? So
Right.
kind of I've been inspired a lot by him and others.
Yes.
And what he talks about, the double thank you moment, right? And so I think we have a lot of angst in Pilates about ripping people off or charging unfair prices or
Yes.
you know etc. And he says you want to strive for the double thank you moment, where it's basically you have given this work to the client and they have given you money in exchange, and there's a moment at the end where you both go, that was an awesome deal. I really got great
Yes.
value. And it's the double thank you where both of you were like, hey, this has been awesome. I'd work with you again because this has been such a great experience. And if you can
Well
get to
said.
that moment, well, that's fair. That's fair. That
Yes.
everyone wins.
I've said it this way. It's about building value for me. So I make no apologies about what I charge, but then I also redouble my efforts to ensure the person feels like they're getting their value for what I charge.
Yeah. And what do you see as that what do you see, what where do you how do you define value? Like what value do you bring?
Well, it's how they define value, right? So I mean, if they came
Yeah.
in and they're like, "Well, I'm not sure if this is really worth my money. This is worth my time. I'm not sure if I'm gonna feel better. I've gone to an osteo, I've gone to Cairo, all these different things, and after the first session, they feel better in some area, like a little bit looser, like they have some hope with their pain. they feel stronger, they got a good sweat on, they're challenged, all those different things. And they may not have been too successful with an exercise, but they weren't discouraged outright. All those things are just enough that they feel like, okay, we're now on a journey. I want more of this. That generally speaking is a value, but like get down to whatever they define as a value. I'm chasing after that so that they can recognize it.
So when a client comes in, a new client comes in, do you start off the first session by having a conversation where you ask them, like, what's your
Absolutely.
outcome here? Like, yeah. So
Yeah.
tell me how that goes.
Well, I just asked them, how did you find us? What is it that you're looking for? What do you know about Pilates? What has been successful for you in the past? Those sort of questions, right? It's like, and just get a sense of what's been their success areas, what are their pain points right now, and then kind of give them a tour of the equipment. So the first day it'll be, okay, well, let's try some mat, let's try some tower, let's try this, let's try that, and just see how everything feels in their body. And then we can just, it depends on how they appeal to, right? Like I see Prepared to Perform is Chad Benson. He's a great technical trainer. Like, you get someone like that, then you speak technical to them. Or you get someone who just wants to feel good in their body, then let's go through some of the feel good exercises. Like, meet them where they're at, right? Like, all that stuff is so key for me.
Yeah, I think, and I think that's so important that it's, you're seeing, I hear so many people say teach the body that's in front of you, and people basically, I think my suspicion is a lot of people don't know what that means. Like, because people say it, but they don't explain, like, okay, here's how you teach the body that's in front of you. And then I don't know, I might be totally wrong on this, but, but I think what you just said is that's what it is to me. It's teaching the body. It's not just the body, it's teaching the human who's in front of you. And, if their goal is to feel good, well, give them feel good exercise. If their goal is to understand the technique, talk technique with them. And that's, like you say, it's meeting them where they're at, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally, or, whatever it might be. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the early guests I had on was Brett Howard, and one of the things I learned from him right out the gate was when he has a new person in front of him, the question he's asking is, what kind of learner is this? So it wasn't necessarily about how can I teach them. It's like, how can they receive what I'm about to teach them? Right? So when you can look at it like that and get a read, or you just figure out what it is and how this person needs to learn, and then you communicate and teach that human in front of you from that perspective, then that much more is going to be received, right? So
I was talking with a friend of mine actually on the Pilates Elephants podcast that we recorded yesterday, and James Trineri, shout out James. He's a Pilates studio owner here in Australia. He's actually just sold 4 studios that he built.
wow. Yeah.
And we talked about sales. He talked about sales, and he said basically every Pilates, and this is such a great quote, every Pilates session is a 50-minute infomercial for why you should do more Pilates here.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
And so he takes a very similar approach to what you just described, which is basically at the start when someone comes in, he's like, okay, how did you hear about us? Why did you come in? Why are you here, basically?
Yeah.
And based on what that person says, their goals are, what's inspired them, etc. He just basically tailors the workout. So if I came to you and said, hey, I want to work on my abs, right? Well, obviously we're going to do abs anyway, but when we're doing abs, you're going to point them out and go, hey, this exercise is great for your abs.
Yes. Yes. Right. That's, and I use that with their, the golfer, right? Like, oh, we're doing this exercise and this is going to help with your rotational power. This is going to help with your range of motion. This is going to, your golf game. I'm not going to guarantee that you're going to get a hole in one, but you'll be hitting that ball further into the woods, right? Like, you make it light of it, but that's, you keep drawing people back to their goal with your speech. Like, you're auditioning for the next session. Like the date, the whole point of your first date is to get a second date.
Right.
Right. So,
hey, James Crater.
James. So, yeah, so that's exactly it. And
Mm.
to get that confidence to do those things is part of the challenge. So I guess that, and that's the dare I say that's the Jenna Zaffino part of it, is to get that heart piece in there when it comes to boosting your confidence when it comes to the sales part.
Uh, yeah, I think. Hey, Victoria Roper. I think I'm really excited about this project with Jenna and working with her, partly because we're so different. I mean,
Mm,
she is so. I mean, she's such a uh, powerful person. Like she's so cool in her own skin and so
yes.
clear on what she values and really she's got incredible ability to talk clearly about complex of ideas. But the thing I think that I'm most excited about working with Jenna about is that we're so different, and I'm very kind of rational and fact based and science
Yes.
based, and I my thinking is quite engineering like, and
Yes.
she is like has a huge brain. She's very smart,
Hmm.
but she's much more coming from the emotional, you know, space, and she acknowledges and can guide people through those sort of self-imposed
Yes.
obstacles.
Obstacles. Yes. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that I think for a lot of us are the main blockers. For most of
Mhm.
us, it's like, okay, maybe you need to learn how to sell, but there's like a million books on how to
Yes.
sell, right? It's like
Right.
take your pick.
Right.
$1.99 on Amazon, and you can learn
Right.
it.
Right. Or
But
two hundred ninety thousand dollars on Amazon, right? Yeah.
$290,000.
And do it, right? So yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
No.
but I think Jenna is brilliant at guiding people gently and firmly,
Yes.
from a place of, whether it be, fear or imposter syndrome or anxiety or
Totally.
self-doubt or, name your poison, you know,
Mhm.
through to a place of like, hey, I can do this. I'm doing this. Hey, I'm actually more awesome than I thought I was.
Right.
I got
Y-
this.
Yes, exactly. Hey, that reminds me of this analogy. This guy, I used to take squash lessons. I love squash. Haven't played it forever, but one of my old coaches used to say that there's a technical game and there's a tactical game. And it sounds like the two of you complement each other in terms of having the technical game and the tactical game. There's the how to do it and there's the when to do it piece. And I think that, like you said, you can grab a book, but you're not going to know how to apply it. You can sign up for a course, but when they give you those 10 steps, they're not taking into account the other 50 other steps that you need to apply and layer over those 10 steps to be successful with those 10 steps. There's so many other pieces that I think both of you are going to be able to really cover all of the bases for the person who needs to find success.
Yeah, I think there are a million books and there are a million courses on how to build a business, and I think there's a bunch of really good books. Like Leslie Logan's book, Profitable Pilates, is fantastic. So
Yeah.
there are some great resources out there if people literally just need a how-to guide. But the thing is, I think everybody's had very similar experiences that you buy a book or you do a course and it's like, great, I watched the video, I read the 10 steps, but then you have to actually do the thing. Like you have to make
Yes.
changes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's hard, right? Because you get up and you've got a client at 8 a.m. and then you've got another client at 9 a.m. and another client, and then you've got to pay your taxes and pick the kids up from school. And a month later, you'll walk past that book and it's dusty, under a pile of three other books on the coffee table,
Right.
and you haven't implemented. And for a lot of us, the implementation is, there are blockers around, like I just described, maybe a time management thing. Like you must carve out time. You have to deprioritize something else
Yes.
in order to create space for the thing that you're going to do. And for other people, the blockers are more around mindset. It's like, okay, what if I don't succeed? What if I'm not good enough? It has to be perfect before I start.
Right. Yes, all that. Yes.
Yeah.
I've seen that before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, so here's my question for you, and in closing, because it's crazy how fast this hour has gone. Who is your ideal client? Who would you see signing up for this and you being like, yes, I'm so glad you're here?
I think our ideal client for this program is somebody who's had a business. I guess it doesn't really matter how long they've had the business. It might be a day, might be 10 years, but they're not happy with something about their business, right? So when they think about their business, the emotion that they experience is not the emotion they want to experience. And I'm pretty sure you must have had this experience, Martin. It's like you own a business, right? So there are some times when you go to bed at night and you think about your business and it doesn't feel good.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
whether it's like there's financial pressures, or whether you're seeing the sort of clients that aren't the sort of clients you want to see, or whether you're working too much, grinding out too many sessions, or whether you're having conflict with your team members, or the team members aren't doing the things the way you want them done, or whatever the thing is about your business, or whether you're working really hard and just not making enough money,
Right.
or whether you can't find enough clients, like whatever it is, if there's something that is not doesn't feel good, to you,
Yes.
and that you are ready to actually make changes, right? Because it's very, it's very easy to go along with this little kind of inner voice going, yeah, this isn't quite right. This isn't quite right. And then years later, it's still there. And for everyone, I think often there has to be some kind of tipping point or triggering event where it's like, I don't know, you can't pay the electricity bill, or your kids leave home, or whatever, the new big box gym opens up around the corner, or whatever it is, something happens and you think,
sense of urgency.
I can't keep going like this,
Right.
something needs to change. And at that point, all of those changes that used to seem impossible and scary, and it's like, there's no way I could do that. All of a sudden you start thinking, yeah, maybe I could, maybe I could do that.
Right.
And so and at that point, if you feel like you're ready to genuinely come, because this is a case of like, well, you can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, right? So this program is a project-based program where you come in and it's 100% live. It's facilitated by Jenna and me, and it's over 12 weeks, and it's 2 sessions a week, and we're going to start out by guiding you to dream your ideal business.
Okay.
And
great.
And the thing is that, most of us edit before we write. We don't allow ourselves to dream.
Censor it.
Yeah. It's like, well, if you want to live in the Maldives and teach online, great. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Right. Yeah.
Or if you just want to do what you're doing but get paid twice as much, great. Let's talk about that. Or if you want to do what you're doing but just see half as many clients, or get rid of a certain type of client that you don't like working with and work with more of, whatever it is. Like, let's just allow ourselves to dream whatever. And then we're gonna create then we're going to go into a very pragmatic space and say, okay, what is a tangible outcome, like a SMART goal, a measurable thing that we can create in the world, okay, that is a direct path from here towards where you want to be, right? And that is going to be your project for the next 3 months, and we're going to guide you through. So whether that's like, I need to hire a studio manager, I need to put my prices up, I need to ditch these 5 clients, and whatever it might be, you get to design your own dream and your own project, and then we're going to coach you through, right, well, if you want to hire a studio manager, what skills do you need? If you want to put your prices up, what skills do you need? So we're going to help you coach you through that, and also coach you through the fear, like of putting your prices up or making that
Yes.
higher, or whatever it might be. So
Right.
yeah, so I guess that's our person.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, I think of that from my perspective of running a business where I would have, a dream. I start my business with the idea of doing X, Y, and Z, and then I'm only doing X and Y, and Z still on the shelf is something I want to do one day. And now I'm like, okay, now I want to get that course catalog of online programs started, or now I want to start this, whatever it is. That there's a frustration that comes from not being able, like spending so much time working in your business that you spend no time working on your business. Now I have you all as a support to help me work on my business and get it to its potential or closer to.
Yeah, and I think we all have those things that we would like to do, and
Mm-hmm.
not all. I mean, not we can't do all things, you know.
Right, right.
Um, so I guess it's about, for me, it's about what's truly important to you, and it's just like you said with your clients, Martin. Why are you here? Like,
Yeah, let's start there. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Raphael, I wish we had more time. I'm backing right up on a client coming in, and I didn't even ask you how you found Pilates. Like, like just the baseline, what even brought you to this space, man. So I'd love to have you back again and to continue this conversation. And also, at some point, maybe have you and Jenna in the space, and you guys can just talk about how it's going down the road when we have some people in it, and you've kind of massaged it to make it a great program for the people jumping in. So let's do that.
yeah. Thanks so much, Martin. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I'm sorry it has to end. I look forward to the next one. I'd love to have you on Pilates Elephants one time. So maybe
Yo,
we'll
that'd be so fun.
talk about
We'll,
that. Yeah.
we'll continue it there. Awesome. I
Great.
didn't even get a
Thanks so
chance to read
much.
some of there's a few comments here too from back. Oh, James Crater was saying hello, Roper, Blaze, listening skills. We talked about a bunch of things that came out here. Yes, Raphael, really, really appreciate your time. Thanks. I know you didn't have to wake up early, but thanks for doing the early shift with me. And thank you so much to everyone who joined us today.
Yeah. Thank you, Martin. It's been a real pleasure.
Awesome, man. All right, I'll sign you off. Thank you so much. Take care.